Hello, my name is Steve. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to duplicate one of the delivered autocomplete rules. Then I'll edit it so that it validates a business object based on slightly different requirements than the original delivered rule. Sign in using the username and password assigned to you and enter your sandbox. As you can see, I'm already in a sandbox, logged in as HCM Impl 20. The yellow toolbar at the top of the page indicates that you are in a sandbox. To navigate to the Autocomplete Rules Editor, click the Tools menu on the yellow toolbar and select HCM Experience Design Studio. On the HCM Experience Design Studio page, make sure that the Autocomplete Rules tab is selected. We're going to copy one of the delivered rules and then edit it for a new use case. The delivered rule validates that a promotion or transfer has an effective date on the 1st or 16th of a future month. The effective date is a field in the when and why section of the action flows, so we know this will be a rule based on the when and why business object. We're going to duplicate this rule and edit it so that it applies to the new hire process. And we want to validate that the action takes place on just the first day of a future month, and that it is for a specific action reason. When we duplicate a rule, we want to change the name of the rule so that it accurately describes the purpose of the rule. We also want to be sure to set the new rule to active so that we can test the rule. The delivered rule is set up to trigger during a transfer or promotion flow. But we also want our rule to apply to the new hire flow, so we're going to add that to the condition that verifies the action type. Now we're going to test this rule by entering the new hire flow. We're going to make sure that the effective date is not on the 1st or the 16th, because we want to trigger the error message. We'll enter a value for legal employer, as this is a required field. Now, when we click Continue to exit out of the when and why regions, we get an error message. Even though we did edit the rule to include the hire an employee action, it also would have triggered in the promote or transfer flows as the rule was delivered. This shows that this delivered rule is a statutory type rule. It works as delivered with no editing. Now, we'll return to our rule so that we can edit it to meet our unique business requirements. We don't have a requirement that an effective date can be on the 16th of the month. We only want that date to be on the 1st of the month, so we don't need the variable for the 16th. Notice that the editor does not allow us to delete the variable. This is because the variable is used farther down in the logic of the rule. We'll have to delete the lines that reference the variable before we can delete the variable itself. Now we'll start deleting some of the other variables we don't need for our rule. First, we'll delete the user role variable. Oracle includes this variable in case you want to use it in the business logic to control which users are affected by the rule. We won't need to do that, so we'll delete it. Next, we'll delete the variable that tests if we are on a responsive UI page. This is included in the delivered rule in case some users are still using classic pages and they want to prevent this rule from triggering on those pages. That doesn't apply in our case, so we'll delete this variable. We can also delete the variable that holds the current legislation code. Again, this variable is included for those users who may want to specify that this rule applies only to certain legislations. Next, we'll delete the first if clause of the rule. In some cases, you may want this rule to trigger only when there is an existing assignment for the employee, but we don't need that for our rule. Now that we've deleted that if clause, we can delete the variable that was referenced in the clause. You can make additional changes to the condition for the when and why action type code, but we already added the hire an employee action, so we can leave this as is. Unlike the delivered rule, we only want this rule to trigger for a specific action reason, so we need to add another condition statement to test for that. When we add the new condition, it is by default the action date. We'll change it so that it is for the action reason ID. For the action reason, we want to set it to hire to fill a vacant position. So this rule will only trigger when that action reason is selected in the when and why section. Next, we'll delete the condition that checks to see if the action date is the 16th of the month. The delivered rule allows the actions on that day, but we don't want our rule to do that. Now that we've deleted that condition, we can delete the variable that was referenced in that condition. So now let's take a look at the other logic in our rule. This condition compares the action date to the current date to see if the action date is in the future. And these conditions determine if an error message will be thrown. If the action date is not the first of the month, or if it is not in the future, then the rule will display an error message. The user will have to fix the action date to proceed with the flow. The delivered error message is not quite accurate for our version of this rule, so we'll need to edit the message text. Now we can test the rule. We'll do this by going into the new hire flow again. We'll intentionally have the action date so it is not the first of the month, and we'll be sure to select the action reason. Because the date is not an allowed hire date, we get the error message. We'll test the rule again by removing the action reason. Because our rule only applies to the specific action reason, the error message will not appear, and we can continue on with the hire flow. This concludes a demonstration of how to copy and edit one of the delivered autocomplete rules. Thanks for watching.